Yalla.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to this learning experience brought to you by JFrog. My name is Cody, and welcome back to Techstrong Learning. We've got an exciting program ahead, but before we dive into things, I have just a couple of notes to review with you. First off, we are recording today's session, so if you happen to miss any of our discussion, if you'd like to rewatch, or if you'd like to share with your team, you will be receiving the recording shortly after we conclude this live session today. Now, if you'd like to get involved with our program today, there are a couple of ways to do so. The first option is to use the chat tab on the right side of your screen. So when you see that chat tab over there, I'd like you to let us know from where in the world you're joining from today. Now, if you have specific questions, we want you to send those into the Q&A tab on the right side of that chat section. Additionally, we will have one poll that we'll be launching towards the beginning of our program today. I think it's on about slide 9, so keep an eye out for that poll as it comes up. And if you jump over to the handout section, you'll find a copy of our slides available for download, so feel free to grab those to aid with today's program. And of course, we will be selecting 2 of our most engaged attendees to receive a $50 Amazon gift card. So be sure to send in your thoughts via the chat, the Q&A, or through our post-webinar survey. So today we're discussing Don't Fear the Machines, bridging the gap between ML development and DevSecOps. I'm joined today by Zohar Sachs, Senior Director of Product at JFrog. And I'm also joined today by Gianluca Bertelli, Senior Prototyping Engineer AI/ML at AWS. So Zohar and Gianluca, thank you both so much for joining us today on Techstrong Learning. Zohar, do you want to get us started with the presentation?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Cody. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. This is my first Techstrong webinar, and it's great fun to be here. Let's go into the slides, okay? So we were just introduced. I'm a Senior Director with JFrog. I'm being slightly over a year with JFrog, with a long experience in R&D development management, from VP R&D to co-founder, CTO, system architect, going back to being a developer. Gianluca, would you like to say some words about yourself as well?
Yes, thank you, Zohar. I'm Gianluca Bertelli, Senior Prototype Engineer, AI/ML. I'm based in California, Silicon Valley, and I have a lot of experience in the tech space. I work as a developer, technical evangelist, and I did a lot of AI work lately in the last 2 years. So thanks for having me here.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining. So before we start, I usually like to start with setting the grounds and understanding the basics. So what is software supply chain? Basically, software supply chain is the bunch of procedures and components and libraries and tools that your organization has developed in order to make sure that you are publishing a software the best way to the best of your organization ability. And usually the process traditionally we look something like this. You will have a developer, software engineers coding, and then you have DevOps engineering making sure that this code is being built to software. It doesn't depend if it's a mobile software, an APK, a desktop software, a service, an on-prem installation, operating system, whatever. Usually that will be the process, and then you have to deploy it. Deployment can be, back in the days, it was usually throwing it on a CD. Today, it's sometimes uploading it to the App Store of the different mobile provider, or putting it somewhere on the internet where it can be purchased and download, or having it as a service over the internet. In the past few years, we have an advancement in this process. We have 2 more things we need to keep our eyes on, which are compliance and security. Security was always a problem, but now with everything available on the internet, it's really easy to somebody to stop, or it's much easier to somebody to have a large effect on many customers if we have a SaaS software, or to take over their assets if we are installed software. So we have a lot of new security concerns, And coming to compliance, different areas of the world are coming with different regulatory rules. Different markets have different compliance rules, so we might comply with them as well, as we want to be able to streamline our software.
Yes, thanks, Laura. So here, before to start, I would like to put some context. So I'm here in California and work with mostly US-based customers. My team is a special team within AWS. We create real working prototypes that can be physical prototypes or digital prototypes. And we try to be ahead in the market and follow the latest trends. That's why in the last year, we focused our team on AI, and especially in the last 8 months, we are focusing on generative AI. So that being said, working with AWS and my team, what we have seen so far as a trend in the AI space is two different and separated trends, what they call managed models and what they call custom models. What are the differences here? So in the managed model case, you don't have actually the binary. You just subscribe to a provider and you directly can use very easily the model itself. So you can do the inference immediately. For AWS, as a provider, we have a service called Bedrock, where you can choose among a different set of foundation models. And there are pros and cons in this scenario. For sure, it is really easy to use, and it's available. Usually, the models are available through HTTP API, but one of the beauty of this is that you don't need to manage the binary, you don't need to manage the life cycle of your AI model. On the other side, there is the custom model. In the custom model, you actually own the binary. So you are responsible for the life cycle of the binary, but the binary belongs to you. And what's the difference is that it gives you more flexibility, because you can then use the model wherever you want, not just through an HTTP API, but you can deploy the model to an edge device, to a different architecture, and so on and so on. In this case, you have more flexibility, but you need to manage the life cycle. That means you need to version, to publish a new model, new weights over the time. If you choose this trend, so the custom model, definitely you need a software to manage your life cycle and your supply chain. And I think JFrog here is playing a great role in this custom model trend.
Cool. Thank you, Gianluca. So basically, we're talking a little bit with what we talked in the previous slide was a little bit about the need to have a process and the need to have like a slightly less rigid process. And there are many ways to look at each one of the processes we're talking about. MLOps have, I don't know, like too many definitions, and DevSecOps have too many definitions as well. So I want to have some definition we can work here in this discussion, and to make sure that everybody is aligned on the same definition. So basically, machine learning operation, MLOps, is a set of practices that automate and simplify your machine learning workflows and deployments. And your organization can use MLOps to automate and standardize processes across the machine learning lifecycle. Okay, think about an organization, huge organization with many employees and machine learning researchers and data engineers and ML engineers, etc., DevOps, and they need to make sure that whenever a model is transitioning from one state to another, it's transitioning in the right way, in a usable way, in order to streamline the software to the customer, which is always our goal. And DevSecOps is a standard of the integration of development, security, and operation, looking at the three parts. Development, the process of planning, coding, building, and testing application, trying to set the R&R of those three bodies. Security, ensuring the released application is free from exploitable vulnerabilities or malicious code. And operations, practices of releasing, monitoring, and fixing any issues. Today's world, as you know, is very, very fast. And whenever we have a problem with an application, usually we have 3 other opponents trying to get our eyeballs, and we want our customer to stay within our application and be happy with this. If you compare now for a second coding and machine learning development, you see there is several similarities. In coding, as we've seen earlier, we have a software engineer who's building, DevOps engineer who's building the code, and then a deployment process. In the model world, it all starts with data. Models need some data to learn from. The machine learning is based on data, based on examples always. The analysis of example is really different between different machine learning algorithms and genres and trends, but you always need a lot of data. Then you are creating a model. You are researching the data, trying to find the holy grail of understanding what's happening in the data, and then you try to teach a machine how to look into the data of this type and find something meaningful. And then you deploy your model into production. Again, DevOps will be in charge of this deployment or the build process of it, etc. Now, these 2 similarities coming to the 2 lines we spoke about earlier, which I haven't put in this slide due to lack of space. But basically, in all of them, you will have compliance and you will have security. Okay, just like software have security and you can use a malicious package, data can be malicious as well. Somebody can poison your data. It's a thing that happens. They can put data that will direct your model to the wrong or biased decisions. Very bad. And then models, open source models, are just a piece of code that somebody put somewhere on the internet, very smart piece of code, but somebody might implement a malicious behavior there, or or have a model poisoning, just like with regular packages. And of course, data have many regulations on it. Who can see it? Who can watch it? Who can view it? Who can manage it? Is it allowed to be downloaded to the developer machine or not, etc. All these things must work together. You don't want to reach this step and get a message from the legal department that somebody breached something here, and you need to start all over again, make sure the entire pipeline is working correctly. Believe me, it's really, really a nightmarish experience. So looking a little bit deeper into training now, into this part, basically, after we have the data, before we deploy the actual development of the model, usually there is a data collection and data preparation. Data need to be prepared for several reasons. We will not get into them, but basically it's cleaning and augmenting of the data, usually depends on the data type. And then, or sanitizing the data as well, which is a little bit like that. Then you start to train the model and evaluate the model. This is a iterative process. And once you have a good enough model based on your evaluation, you can deploy the model. And sometimes it can be a day, it can be a week, it can be even met organization when it is 15 minutes, or it can be 2 years. You will retrain the model and go back to here, the step that you have new data, you retrain the model, you evaluate the model again, you play the model. It's really important to understand that this is a very simplistic structure of how models are being trained. There are stations, there are situations and use cases, when these 2 blocks are multiplied several times. For instance, if you're planning to run your model on an edge device, on a phone, using phone models, mobile models, or something like this, usually what you'll do, you will train it on a regular machine, on a developed machine, on some small subset of the data. Then you'll train it on a larger machine with a larger subset of the data. And once you have a model, you will check the training, you'll evaluate the training on the end device as well. So keep in mind that these 2 might be like, those 2 blocks might appear several times, one after the other, with some promotion between them of interesting versions. Cody, I think it's time for our poll. So So we are very interested in how you organize currently your machine learning model management. Where are you between we are not managing at all to we are so managed that we can write the book, and we will appreciate your input now. So we are starting to see results. If you are one of the 38% who says that they are not using ML models in your organization yet, I would appreciate if you write in the comments, when do you expect to start using machine learning in the organization? It would be quite interesting to understand the yet, if the yet is like short term or long term. Okay, so let's continue. Thank you everybody for participating in the poll. And basically, you see it in the questions as well. The AI and ML today is a wild west. We can actually look at the AI and ML world today, just like very similar to open source world, I don't know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so, when there were a lot of open source and there were very, 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 very small amount of regulation for it. So basically, the first thing you have is the model lifecycle. Organizations are struggling with the question of how to store models in the organization, how to decide which version to use, which versions are good and which versions are bad, or which versioning mechanism to use. Because the versioning is not just a number, there is a lot of context in the version. In compliance field, there is a lot of questions about how to track the model origins. Okay, maybe the module was changed, maybe it was exploited, maybe the next version is really bad and we don't want to use it, and how to ensure that the model is ensuring the company policies. The best example here is licensing. We all know about licensing issues with code, with packages. I think that every developer in an organization is aware of the fact that you shouldn't use in a commercial software GPL licenses, because this will force you to expose your entire code base, which is usually not welcomed in financial organization. Do we have the same in models? What is the meaning of using LGPL model in your organization? That's really interesting question. What are the policies around that? And in security, we want to know to make sure that there is no malicious or unsecure code inside the model, and basically it all sums up to our wish to bring data scientists and ML engineering into SDLC. SDLC is software development lifecycle. Okay, we want to be able to streamline our software with all its aspects in the same way, and data science is a little bit less structured today towards this, and this is something that we want to suggest. Okay, so I will talk a little bit. I see that, just a second, I need to get the name. Sorry, questions. I saw a question from I lost the question now. We'll get to it in a second. Hey, somebody asking in the question about how do we prepare to the future of unknowns, and we believe that the best way to get prepared to it is to have a very good structure that is on the same time really good at managing your needs and can be changed when needed if the reality has been changed. So basically, I will demonstrate on JFrog. There are some other solutions in the market, but for me, JFrog is the easiest. So basically, the first thing you want is a model registry and dataset registry. For us, it's JFrog Artifactory. This is the place where you keep your models. This is the place where the single source of truth. If you start throwing models inside S3, somebody will get confused. Somebody will use an older version. Now, before you add models into your organization and mark them as available to be used, and today you probably want to proxy it. If you're using the open source models, you probably want to proxy them. We call it remote models and remote repository. And you want a mechanism that will yank the latest version if you want to and allow you to approve it to usage. So all this is very, very interesting. But before you are getting a model, you want this model to be curated, okay? The meaning of curation is the ability to approve or disapprove, which is not less important, a piece of software from being used in the organization. A very easy example is I want to make sure that this model is maintainable. If this is a model that is like, I don't know, 10 years old since the last version, maybe it doesn't fit in my organization. So curation is like the floodgate. It prevents bad models from getting into the organization. The next step that you want to make sure that when you provide the models, they're okay, because after curation, surprises might happen, right? And maybe you find a new CVE in the model. Maybe the model changed end or something like this, and somebody bought it, and now it's known to be exploited. So for this, we want to have a model scanning, a model compliance, and an LLM compliance. And the tool for this is X-Ray in JFrog, which does all the scans for all the packages. So you enjoy from the same procedures, the same SDLC procedures, the same security procedures for all your digital assets here, which is quite amazing in my view. And then you want to distribute it. So after the model is okay, you can distribute it. And it's really important to understand that this line, the distribution, is affected by X-Ray. And if I got a model into the system, and this model was okay on February, and then on March, somebody found a CVE, X-Ray CVE database will get updated, and this model will be blocked because we want somebody to put an eye on it and make sure it's okay for us because we found a CVE. Maybe it needs to be fixed. And the distribution can happen on top of it. So you just want to have a model distribution, just like in the streamline thing we showed earlier. And then after you have distribution, you want to have it in your runtime. And then again, X-Ray can check that nothing changed there and nobody put a man in the middle attack on your runtime environment. And you can serve the models directly from Artifactory. This is very important for organizations with large models because I see a lot of organizations who are packing together the model inside the Docker. And this is a little bit playing against how Docker likes to work because it creates a very heavy layers, including large models in them. And sometimes it's easier or preferred method to have a carrier Docker and the model and combine them in the runtime. This too, if you prefer to work in this way, it can be done through Artifactory. So in order to bring your model to USDC, we want to have like 3 major points covered. We want to have binary 360. Sorry, it's late here. Sorry, binary 360, which means that we want to manage and control our entire supply chain in a single platform. When the CISO is getting an alert, he wants to see the entire data in one place. Nobody wants to start looking for data somewhere. Universality, different organizations use different methods, different CI methods, different deployment methods, different languages. We have most of the types of binaries and software packages and AI models covered with us. So usually when you're looking for a language, you can see it here in the list. We have over 40. And scalability, as your needs grows, as your organization grows, as your deployment environment grow, you want the software to grow with you. Our servers are known to be high scale. We have a SaaS solution if you want to pay as you go. So it's quite interesting to well. With us, if you already use us, you will probably always use us for your Python packages. So you can benefit again from this cycle of curation, storing, and X-ray on Python as well. You probably host Dockers with us as well for the same reasons. And now, about 3 months ago, we introduced Hugging Face ML repository as well, which give you all the abilities we spoke about on top of the Hugging Face APIs and service. One very interesting point here is that we are providing the facade of the same service, of the same usage of Hugging Face API, both for public models you downloaded from the remote Hugging Face, or if you pre-train the model, you can use the same SDKs, the same tools with something we call Hugging Face local repository, which is basically preserving all the methodologies of Hugging Face, but in your local perimeter of security, in your local environment, in the environment you manage, or in our SaaS, which is basically for you an environment that you are manager or in charge of. Some popular use cases we saw from customers. The first and most trivial use case is proxying public models. This doesn't sound like a biggie maybe, but if you're a Node developer, you probably heard about the LeftPad fiasco a few years ago when somebody got really stressed by how GitHub was communicating with them, or NPM was communicating with him, and he decided to take off a package that brought down the entire JavaScript world on its knees for a few days, because all the deployment that looked to the remote were failing because there was nothing in the remote. He took off the open source. The same thing can happen with models. You can put your model in Hugging Face, work with it for 2 years, and then somebody finishes PhD and he doesn't want to maintain this model anymore. They can take it down. If it was not cached, you have a problem of business continuity. Storing, managing proprietary models. Let's say I am a financial body. I downloaded an image processing model, and then I trained it very, very good to read invoices. All the data about invoices, all the model about invoices is very proprietary to my business. It was used on my customer private data. So I can't put it just in Hugging Face back, but I want to store it somewhere. So with one change of the, with one code change, line of code change, which we will see in a second, I can direct my organization to start working with Artifactory, and I can upload the model to a repository and have the same experience as if I was working with Hugging Face for my private models. Standardizing MLOps processes across various teams. If you have several teams, they have several opinions. We want to have some discussion about what is the MLOps for the organization, because we want flexibility in moving between teams and make sure that everybody is compliant with everything we need. And having automation is a very good way to enforce agreed upon policies. Licensing control for ML models, the LGPL example we talked about. You can find a very good model, then somebody decide to change its license, so it doesn't have a license that complies with your organization. It doesn't have a license at all, which means it's proprietary to somebody probably. You don't want to use it in your production. Ensuring security of public models. Whenever you have a public model, it's basically a stream of bytes that you are running inside a process that you own. It's the most trivial attack vector in security. We want to protect against it. We want to make sure the model is built from something right. Visibility into your ML development. If you want to understand what was built, when it was built, who built it, who accessed it, who touched it, you want to have areas that the BA team is touching, but the financial team cannot touch, or an area where the production team can touch, but the financial team cannot touch, or vice versa. You can do it with us, and make sure that you have the full visibility on who did what. And regulatory and compliance, just like the licenses, we are having more and more coming. We will be very happy to hear your comments about needed stuff as well. I promised you to talk about configuration of the tool. So basically, this is our set me up screen, a screen that allows you to set up environments to use Artifactory. So basically, you need to put those 2 lines of code, run those 2 lines of code once on your machine, and you're connected to a repository you have previously created. We have seamless integration with all the Hugging Face model tool sets, Hugging Face transformers, pipelines, snapshot, and I'm missing one. I don't remember the name, sorry, too excited. And you can use it with all the Hugging Face integration, Jupyter Notebooks, LangChain, Amazon SageMaker. I put some logos here. This is Hugging Face, MLflow, SageMaker, Jupyter, and LangChain. All of them are like top notch, and the integration is quite seamless. And we can talk about integration now even deeper, right, Gianluca?
Yes, thanks, Zor. So before to end this webinar, let me put JFrog in the context of SageMaker. So SageMaker is actually is an umbrella of services for AWS. So you have very different sets of services, some very high level, some low level. Some allows you to play directly with the foundation model, and other services needs to have a binary. So the model, you can bring your own model. One of these services is called SageMaker Inference. That is the one that allows you to have any binary exposed and published as an HTTP endpoint that you can easily call from your application. With this service, usually you create an inference endpoint that is behind the hood. SageMaker creates an EC2 instance, so a virtual machine, where loads a Docker image and within the Docker image, you have the real binary, the real model that you want to use. By default, SageMaker provides different sets of pre-built Docker images with the most common models. But if you want to bring your own model, you need to have your Docker image. And once you have your Docker image, you can redirect SageMaker to use your own model. But in this case, because you need the Docker image, you also need the repository for this. And I do think JFrog here comes into play and fits very well, because it can be the Artifactory can be your Docker image repository, and then it should be really easy to point SageMaker to use JFrog instead of the public registry from AWS.
Okay, everybody, thank you for attending. We still have time, so we can take questions if you like. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed it. Cody, I guess questions are in the chat, right?
Yeah, but I'll come in and read some of these out for you just to help you out a little bit.
Okay.
So let's look at some of the questions we've received throughout the program. Gianluca, I know you touched on a couple of these in the chat, but I do just want to capture them in our recording, posterity. What is the most challenging thing in custom models?
Oh, yes, I replied in private. So basically, when you use your custom model, you don't only own the model, but the entire life cycle. So there are several challenges. Probably one of the first is that you need to maintain a versioning among all the pipeline. So if your training data changes, you may want to know what changed between one model version and the other one. there is a very simple use case. You're training a model, the model behaves differently, and let's say you want to revert, or you want to understand what's changed and make sure it won't happen again. If you don't have a life cycle management, it will be very difficult for you to understand what's changed and how to revert. Instead, if you have a software that allows you to see all the changes in the platform, you have a full versioning from the training data to the model itself, it will be very easily for that.
Yeah, on top of what Gianluca said, with custom models, and this is something Gianluca knows much better than me about, with custom models, you need to manage scale as well. You need to actually, if your model needs, I don't know, GPU, you need to spin up a GPU. You need to manage the cost of it, which of course SageMaker inference is saving in many, the hassle SageMaker inference is saving in many cases. So you need to have enough machines spun up to provide the supply of model provisioning to meet your demand of your customers. I'm sorry, it's a very long sentence, but it's a very challenging experience, because if you are too permissive, you're paying a lot on compute, because models are usually taking a lot of compute effort.
Yeah.
And if you are less permissive, you're paying with customer experience, which is always bad. So this is another very large challenge with custom models. But on top of it, custom models is basically a software. And just like there are services that you will never hesitate to use from third party, like authentication. When I started to write code, like 27 years ago, I wrote authentication to my software always. But about 10 years ago, services that provide authentication, Cognite, right? Sorry, from AWS. Maybe I'm Cognito. Cognito from AWS and others came to the play, and ever since I never wrote authentication in my life again, because it's a very hard problem and somebody else is taking care of it and making sure we are in the top of the advancement of it. So same thing happens with models. There are models you can manage by yourself. Maybe they are core to your business. Maybe they are interesting. Maybe they're too small to have business value in having them as managed models. And there are models that you are really happy that somebody else provide you just when you need them, like, I don't know, open AI models, or the really large language models that you are very happy that you can just go into ChatGPT and write some prompt and get some answers without paying for all the infrastructure behind it.
All right, thanks, guys. Our next question is, how can we ensure that our MLOps platforms are resilient and can handle unforeseen events or disruptions?
So, with your permission, I'll take it from our view. I think that there are two things we need to consider here. First of all, we need to remember that every process is being created based on our past experience. Okay, so we need to always have I always try even to have like a really times in the calendar when I look into my process and do a retrospective and think if they're good enough or not. If they're not good enough, maybe I need to change them, maybe I need to ditch them. Depends on the process. Okay, I don't know, if I put myself a process of reading mails for 50 minutes every day and I found I never do it, I can throw this process. It's my own process. I will find a way to handle it. If I am, I don't know, if I need to assess my employees, this is something the organization decided on. I can speak with HR if I think something is not working good. Thankfully, it's working great, but I need to adjust to the process there. So I think we always need to evaluate how processes are working for us and be ready for change. And the easiest way to be ready for change is to have a very robust very flexible while keeping robust solution. So we need to have the tooling written in a way that they behave like a regular software, where you can put changes into them if you need, without doing too much stuff. Automation can assist a lot with this, because automation, like with procedure, you need to start communicate the procedure to many people. Maybe they remember it, maybe they don't remember it, you're not sure, maybe they comply with it, maybe not, you're not sure. With automation, you write it once, okay, 6 times, test it, make sure it's working, and once it's working to your satisfaction, it will not break. So I think these are the two main aspects that I would use.
All right. I'll go ahead and put this question up on the screen so everyone can read it, because it's kind of an interesting question. But is MLSecOps the logical Venn diagram overlap between ML development and DevSecOps? Is that an incomplete or incorrect assumption?
So in my view, it is, it's I would add the development to this diagram as well, because ML is not a structure by itself. It always has some software that uses it, and the intersect of those three logical circle in the Venn diagram, I think, is creating MSecOps.
Great, thank you so much. Good question, Paul. Another question from Paul came in. How critical is CI/CD in fully bridging ML Dev and DevSecOps?
This is like asking Hammer how crucial our nails in the world. It's like I'm developing infrastructure product for the past 20 years, and I believe that everything should have infrastructure and everything should be automated because I'm working in this market for more than 20 years. So for me, CI/CD is really, really important in any process, having a good structure and good automation. And I think that MSecOps, the problem is always when somebody is forgetting or don't understand totally what they should do manually, okay? I remember 8 years ago, I think, we've developed a huge, in a different company, we developed a huge product for telecom companies, and we wanted to have license scanning, and the license scanning tools we used forced us to go over list of packages and see the license and evaluate if they're a hazard or not. This was undoable. The development manager have a list of about 500 items to go over and see if the license is being used internally in the process or externally in the software. Going forward about 4 years, 6 years, very small amount of time, I was the VP R&D of a small startup. I had about 50 developers, which is a huge amount of software to monitor as well. One of my scanning tools that was fully automated at the time gave me a report that I have an LGPL package inside my requirement text in Python. It took me 5 seconds to find out that this is something that should be in requirement test or dev.text and not in requirement text. It took me 3 minutes to open a Jira. 3 seconds to open a Jira. One of the developers to 1 minute to fix it, and somebody, and maybe it was me, I don't remember, 1 minute to pull request, and we passed SOC 2. This acceleration, think about the amount of things you need to do throughout the day. This acceleration is unbelievable with automation. So for me, I think that putting MLOps or MSec or DevSecOps together and automating them together in the same ways, it's called usability, it's process usability. For me, it's the way to run fast.
All right, it looks like we've got just a couple questions left. So if you've got any questions, go ahead and send them in, everyone. I'll go ahead and put this one up on the screen, but I need suggestions regarding the integration of MLOps and DevSecOps practices to ensure a seamless and secure ML development lifecycle. So Zohar, I think you might have touched on this a little bit, but could you go a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, so basically MLOps is usually divided to 4 parts, I think. Maybe it will be more when I speak. That need to be managed slightly different. At the beginning, you are looking into the data. Usually you get a vast amount of data and you're just scattering through it. There are tools to do it. You can, if you're using images, you can use FastDupe, which is quite amazing tool that I used once. but you're trying to get a grip of the data. There are tools to do it. There are tools to assist you with looking into data. But usually it's a very manual step. You need to see if the data is good enough, clean enough, etc. And then you're starting to do something called data sanitation or data preparation, depends on the organization. And in this phase, I think you must have a very good DevOps process, a very good CI process, because usually data will continue pour in. Usually some of the assumptions you had in the process are wrong, and usually you will need to run the process again several times. So the rule of thumb is everything you need to run more than once. Please automate it. It will make your life very, very easy. And then after you have the data, you're trying to experiment with it. For this, there are platforms like experiment management. The thing that is very different from regular software is that in regular software, when you are running a build, which is a little bit similar, build to QA is a little bit similar to experiment management. Usually when you're running a build, you have one coherent, consistent result. If you will run a build today and you will run a build tomorrow, you will get two binaries which are about the same. Maybe the date is different, depends on the format of the file, but they are the same. They're binary compatible in most cases. Maybe there are some cases I'm missing. With models, this will not happen, almost for sure. You will get two different models, because the way models are work is that they're making decision on what is more probable, or depends on the model, but this is a very simplistic model. So you want to maintain as much. So sorry, it's really often to have somebody who is running 10 trainings at the same time, maybe with slightly different parameters, and out of or 20, and even so companies around 1,000 of them, and out of them there is a verification step that select the best nominees. The best nominees are basically calculated based on time and money. How much time do you have to evaluate the model, and how much money do you have to spend on it, and how fast do you need your software? So let's say that out of those 10, we have 3 that look okay, but then we want to promote them to another environment to check them with larger data. This is a more costly test. We want to make sure that it's working in wild data scenarios or dirty data scenarios or whatever. So in this case, you will immediately find out that having a CI process that keeps all the versions of the models you train, and then allow you to promote the models that are interesting to another environment, is very, very useful. And now in this stage, a lot of organizations are finding a huge surprise. 3 months ago, they were doing a data sanitation process on the data they got as a sample, but now they have real life data, and this real life data does not meet the model needs, because the model have some data needs because it looks at the post sanitization data. Okay, so if you followed my cookbook, my sort of cookbook, now you already have CI process for data sanitation. You just need to make it production ready, which is less work than remember what you did, I don't know, 3 months ago on your laptop, and you have the process for production already ready. This is a very, very important best practice. And now there are those several steps that I talked about. Sometimes you need few validations. You need to make sure that you are not too strict with your weights. You need to make sure you're not too loose with your weights, to make sure the data you trained on is wide enough. And once you passed all those validations, you need to, again, to do something that we call promote in JFrog, and promote the model in the version you think is the best to production. And sometimes you have regulations there, like you need double verification, double signature on models. Again, automation will solve it really, really easy. And another interesting thing about model is that with binary, like when I throw my binary to the world, when I deployed it, it can run forever, usually, unless I have memory leakage and stuff. But the same code run for many, many years, okay? Think about something like, I don't know, Hacker News is running in Lisp for, I think, about 20 years or something, on about the same code, about the same code base. And there is no need to change it. But with models, there might be cases where the data is changed, the world has changed a little bit, and then the model is not as predictive or as suggestive as you want it to be. So usually we'll have in production validation phases that will make sure the model is still good enough to your needs. And maybe you will need to get back to the phase when you are reevaluating your base data and retraining the model. And not just because the technology has changed, but maybe because your problem world has changed a little. Okay, so this will be the best process, in my view, you can have. Another thing that is quite interesting is that you sometimes want to dump what's in the machine head, to dump the model memory or snapshot it for audit and control to make sure that it goes the right way, because it's really hard to, like, sort of production debugging method. Again, you will want to save this data next to the model version you have. So having a versioning schema is really important. Versioning schema sounds like something quite straightforward. We think about semantic versioning usually when you think about it. Version 1 is after version 2, and version 6 is after version 5. With models, it can be a little bit more tricky because the version consists of so many parameters that you probably want to keep them just for your memory and the data it was originated from. So it's complex. It depends on the problem domain, but I think I gave some guidelines that are good enough to start with.
All right, well, Zohar, it looks like with that explanation, you kind of knocked out the rest of our questions as well. So way to go there. It looks like we've got one final question for you guys. Do you have any free demo or hands-on learning paths about this topic?
So I will speak for JFrog, and Gianluca will speak about AWS. We have a trial environment. You can just go on, log into our environment, start using it, start playing with all the technology I talked about and much more. If I'm not mistaken, the trial is open for 2 weeks. It's being undergo some changes lately. And then you can, if you really need, you can ask your account executive for some extension if you need it, and you already contacted the account executive. So we do have an environment to play with.
Yes, for AWS, you can create an account and you can start use some service for free. There is a certain quota that you can use for free, and then you should be really it should be really easy to start with, experiment some AI models. As long as you don't need a big machine, you are ready to go.
All right. Well, Zohar and Gianluca, I really appreciate the time that you guys have taken to come on to Techstrong Learning with us and really run us through everything. So thank you so much for bringing your expertise to our audience today.
Thanks for you, Karim,
for having us.
Of course. So a couple of final reminders to our audience, and I'll go ahead and put this last slide back up on the screen as well. So we will be sending you the recording from today here as soon as it becomes available, but you can also find the recording living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and it will be in the on-demand section. I'll be contacting our 2 most engaged attendees today to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So thank you so much for engaging in our chat and Q&A. If you'd like to become eligible and you weren't so active today, just be sure to fill out that post-webinar survey. We'd love to hear your feedback, and that will qualify you for our giveaway. I'd like to thank JFrog for sponsoring our program today. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and the time you spend with us here at Techstrong. And we hope to see you at a future Techstrong Learning experience. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect. Thanks again to Zohar and Gianluca.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.